Because we're not investing the money. The money that we're borrowing from China, we're not investing it. We're not building any factories. We're spending it. The money's gone. We're blowing the money. And worse, it's the government that's spending the money. The government is undermining the economy with that money. They're digging us into a deeper hole. So our creditors are going to figure this out. And if the politicians feel that all they can do is stimulate, that if the Chinese stop buying, that they just have to keep printing to make up the difference, and they keep stimulating, then we get an overdose of stimulus. And we actually kill the economy because we destroy the currency completely, and we get into runaway inflation. And that is what's coming. And we have runaway inflation, then interest rates go up dramatically. And if you think the economy is bad now, imagine how bad it is when you take rising unemployment, which is going to keep getting worse, right? And you combine that with double-digit inflation and double-digit interest rates. I mean, you get the 1970s on steroids, or you get something worse than the Great Depression, and that is where we're headed. And there is the only way to stop this cycle is to change the players in Washington. Because career politicians, they're never going to solve these problems. Because the only problem to them is getting reelected. That's their problem. But that's not our problem. Our problem is the policies that keep them in office. That's what's destroying our economy. That's what's undermining our currency. And that's what has to stop. And that's why I want to go there. Right? I don't want to go to Washington because I want to get along with the other senators. I don't want to go there because I want a career in politics and I'm going to try to play ball. I want to change the dynamic. I want to go to the Senate and try to wake these people up, knowing that it's a deliberative body, knowing that I can filibuster, that I can stand on that Senate floor and talk until I run out of breath and try to put a stop to what they're doing. Try to, veto every single, or get every bill stopped dead in its tracks so it can't pass. And try, when they want to raise the national debt, to try to stop it from happening. And, there are no new regulations. Nobody has to go to Washington to write any regulations. We need to repeal the regulations they've been writing for the past decade or two, because that's what's been undermining our competitiveness. President Obama just announced he wants to hold a summit on job creation. Right? As he's destroying jobs, he's trying to figure out why there are no jobs. The politicians who have never, like Chris Dodd, he's never run a company. He has no idea where jobs even come from because he's never had one. And he's never employed anybody. Jobs come from two things. And there's two reasons that there are jobs. One is that there's capital. Right? The reason that one person works for somebody else is because the other person has the capital. And capital is tools. It's a machine. It's or it's office equipment. It's some capital that you have to have. Right? You can't work for somebody that has nothing. And the other thing is a profit motive. Because if I'm an entrepreneur and I've sacrificed and I've saved my money so that I have capital, I'm only going to hire somebody if I can do it at a profit. I have to be able to make money. Otherwise, what's in it for me? Why take the risk of hiring somebody, expose myself to legal liability, payroll taxes, all kinds of stuff, if I can't make any money? So I need a profit motive and I need capital. But everything the government is doing is undermining capital accumulation, where interest rates are too low. No one's going to save money with low interest rates, so we don't have any savings. Without savings, you don't have capital. We're taxing capital formation, and we're making it difficult for businesses to hire. We're laying more regulation and more taxes on top of an over-regulated economy. There's no chance that we're going to get any jobs out of that. So somebody has to educate the other senators to understand that if they want to figure out why we have a problem, they have to look in the mirror. That Washington is responsible for these problems. That it wasn't a failure of capitalism or a failure of free markets. That's not why we're in trouble. It wasn't because of Wall Street greed. It was because of politics, because of government and how they interacted with the economy, how they distorted the economy. In order to get votes and to curry favor with people who were giving them money, they passed laws and they did things that prevented the free market from functioning properly. They're the ones that created all the excessive risk-taking, where free markets would have prevented it. And they flooded the economy with cheap money that a free market never would have done. Interest rates would have been much higher had it not been for the Federal Reserve artificially suppressing them. And so we inflated this phony bubble economy. Our industries have been destroyed. Our manufacturing base has been gutted because of government policy. We're not uncompetitive because of wages. We're uncompetitive because of taxes and regulations. That's what drove our companies out of business. And in order to get them back, which we have to do, these people in Washington think that we can have a service sector economy, that we don't need to make stuff, that we could just, we can't do that because we can't export those services. We can't run perpetual trade deficits year after year after year and pretend that it's a viable economy. It's not. So if somebody can go there, somebody can get into the Senate and bang some sense into their heads. And I'm sure that this whole thing is going to play out over the next 6 years. Whoever is in the Senate is going to live through this. And what I'm afraid is whenever there's a problem, right, the government reacts to it by seizing more power. We got after September 11th. What did the government do with the war on terror? They passed the Patriot Act and all kinds of. They never could have got that unpatriotic bill passed during peacetime, but because of the mood of the country, they're able to usurp more power. And so, as things get worse, like with what happened in Bush with those huge bailouts and the TARP, they never could have done that if there wasn't a perceived crisis. So this next crisis is going to be far worse, as I said. Who knows what powers the government is going to try to usurp in that environment? And the more power they take, the more damage they're going to do. So if somebody is in the Senate who actually understands this, who has a good record that's documented of predicting things, because as long as guys like Ben Bernanke have been wrong, that's how long I've been right. It's very easy to go back and look at the things that were said by Bernanke, or by Greenspan, or by Geithner, or by any of these guys, or by Chris Dodd, and compare it to the things that I said. And look, they've never been right on anything. And as my forecasts continue to prove correct, then maybe some people in the Senate will listen to me. And I don't know how long it's going to take. I mean, there's a lot of them there. But, I don't have to do it all at once. I can convince one senator, and then another senator, and then another senator. And pretty soon, we start growing in numbers, and we can make a real difference. And, nobody really hears me in Washington when I talk in the private sector. But maybe they'll hear me. Maybe they'll hear me from the Senate. Maybe the president will hear me when I talk in the Senate. Maybe they won't be able to ignore the things that I'm saying. And maybe, just maybe, we can make a change. I know if we don't, we're doomed. I know Barack Obama talked about in one of his speeches, he said, when you're in a car and you're driving towards a cliff, you've got to change directions. And I agree. I want to change directions. The problem is Barack Obama stepped on the gas pedal, and we're going to go over the cliff a lot quicker. So somebody's got to wrestle the steering wheel away from these guys and make sure that this doesn't happen, because the stakes are very, very high. And unfortunately, we've gotten ourselves into such a mess that there is no easy solution. There is no quick fix. The markets will work if we let them. But if we don't let them, if we keep interfering and keep trying to micromanage the economy from Washington, like we got a Politburo over there, and that somehow central government planning is going to work where capitalism failed, we're doomed if we follow that. When the politicians are telling us, remember when they first passed all the TARP and everything, they said that it's no time for principles, that we have to act. The times are tough, so we have to throw our principles out the window. George Bush said we have to abandon capitalism to save it. Right? Problem is, first of all, he abandoned capitalism when he took the oath of office. But we don't have to abandon capitalism to save it. We have to embrace it to save it. What we have to abandon is the socialism, the Keynesianism that got us into trouble. We need capitalism now more than ever. We need free markets. We need rational pricing. We need real interest rates. And without that, all the government is going to do is lead us into a much bigger crisis than the one they claim that they're trying to solve. And so maybe as I said, if I go to Washington and get them to appreciate this, get them to understand the gravity of the situation and how big this mess is and what their part was in creating it, then maybe we can finally do what we need to do to turn this situation around. Anyway, thanks for taking the time to listen to me.
There's two things you said. There should be term limits, so the politicians won't have the power, at times. There should be term limits in the Senate, term limits in the Congress.
Yeah, I didn't say anything about it, but I would be in favor of it. The argument against term limits is that there's some really good people that we might lose. I'm willing to risk that. Because